Hello, 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 hello. That's loud enough. Block stars to be on stage. Why we
There was a great cartoon in the newspaper today. It was a bear getting up to give a motivational talk, and the audience was full of cats, and the topic was how to do nothing for months at a time.
Well, right audience for that. Okay. And certainly the right speaker. Bears, well, they hibernate. They wake up occasionally when they get hungry, don't they? Or do they stay asleep the entire winter? I don't know.
They wake up in banks.
I know nothing about bears living in the city. All right, chapter 6. So this particular section of the Uji is kind of divided. She's got chapter 6 is the 100 grasses exist, and chapter 7 is the 100 grasses are time. So she's divided this particular topic of the 100 grasses into 2 sections. So we'll cover it as such. So Dogen writes, since such is a fundamental reason, we must study and learn that myriad phenomena and numberless grasses, parentheses things, exist over the entire earth. And each of the grasses and each of the forms exist as the entire earth. These comings and goings are the commencement of Buddhist practice. When you have arrived within this field of suchness, it is a single grass, a single form. The forms are understood and not understood. The grasses are grasped and not grasped. So, and I like the fact that she kind of puts it in perspective, with the koan that we're a little bit more familiar with. She said basically this arraying of the self as the whole world being time is clearly stated in Dogen's Genjo Koan when he says, to forget the self is to be experienced by the myriad dharmas. So the wording of that is very, very careful, because it steps through to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by 2,000 dharmas, or this is the way she translates it. It is to forget the self is to be experienced by the myriad dharmas. In other words, instead of thinking that we have to go out to get something, we are those things already, and we just let ourselves manifest as those things without having to take it, because that is what we already are at any given time, or in our being as time. So we are already the myriad dharmas, the myriad things that are the earth is made of. Everything. If you understand a single grain of sand, you understand the entire universe. Is really what they're getting to. In all reality is constantly interpenetrating with all things in reality. And these grasses are numberless, but a single blade of grass is equally as much as known as 100 grasses, the numberless grasses. Grasses are basically metaphor for phenomena, for events that are happening for the world as it is arising in reality. And the realization of that just comes from letting go of who we think we are. Letting go of the grasping due to our identities and our boxed in shapes and what we think is me and other. That there really is no me. There's no me that really exists that's separate from other. Because all things arise interrelated with everything else. They don't, and we can't even name things without understanding that it is not something else. You can't have cold or hot without cold, or up without down, um, or self without others. And the setting up of these identities are not real. They're convenient. They're effective tools. You need to establish the self in order to even have a conversation. You have to set up an subject-object relationship in any basic sentence structure in which we talk. So as soon as we open our mouths, we separate the world into two, and it's not a bad thing, but it's not the only thing. We do need this intellectual approach, but it is always after the fact. It's always late to the table. So it's the instantaneous arising of reality, just as it is, happens before thought. It is this precept, as we refer to it. Each and all of these forms are not solid. They're constantly interpenetrating. We are not solid forms. We are constantly exchanging. She was a little bit more superficial, reminding us that we're sitting in this group. We are exhaling and inhaling each other's breath. So that becomes part of us on a cellular level. By the time we leave this room, we are truly one. Even if you didn't think you were before, you breathed in what I breathed out, and everyone else in the room. It sounds a little gross, but
Start
so I'm like that. I don't want to be one with you.
Oops, I just coughed out while
I know. But it's true. It's true on a subatomic level too, because our molecules and the atoms, the basic subatomic particles of atoms, are constantly in exchange with each other, and everything is constantly in this vibrational interconnectedness, interpenetratedness with all other aspects of reality. So none of reality separate as a separate part from any other part of reality. And seeing it as parts is useful to a certain extent, because we need to be able to navigate as physical human beings. But it's really not the true nature. True nature is that nothing's separate, and we are truly one. And I think that science continues to prove that on deeper and deeper levels. Amazing that this has been something we've been saying for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, even before we go back to the earliest writings of out of the Hindu books, and this oneness was definitely professed by those saints way back then. So Dogen further writes, no, this is not Dogen. This is from the Hunan school about Indra's net. The infinite interpenetration of all things, the unimpeded identity of all things, is shown in the symbol of the net of Indra. When these concepts are manifested in the mind of the Bodhisattva, then when one of the many obstacles is overcome, all are overcome, and one acquires the destruction of morale and intellectual faults. In practicing the virtues, when one is perfected, all are perfected. And with regard to reality, when one part is revealed, everything is revealed. All things are endowed with universality and particularity. Beginning and end are the same. And when one first arouses the aspiration for enlightenment, one also becomes perfectly enlightened. The goal is inherent in causal practice. So one of the hindrances for us as human beings is that we see things as linear, that one thing happens, one after another, and that there are actually these gaps in between. We can actually measure what that is, but it's not true. That all things arise in this moment, and are interpenetrating all the time. So time, as we are being, is coalescing in this horizon. As we sit here today, we are all time. We are all being. We are all what? We are all you. We are all me. We are all this floor, this cushion, this ceiling, not separate from any of it. Um, Even though we maintain our separate identities, we maintain our separate bodies, that gets regenerated, and that interpenetration continues to happen. And wherever we move ourselves, we are interpenetrating with others arising in that particular moment. Hard to imagine, because we think of ourselves invariably as separate, that this skin is a wall, solid, and keeps all the germs, and everything else out. And if nothing else proved that to be true with COVID, as far as it spread globally, there was nothing that separated us from the rest of the world. Although people, thought it's a hoax, the fact that they didn't believe it didn't stop them from getting. So whatever delusions we want to have does not change reality. Alan Watts, my favorite lines of Alan Watts, in one of his books, he says, "If you understand, things are just as they are. If you don't understand, things are just as they are." It really doesn't. Your understanding has nothing to do with whether it's real or not. Reality is just reality.
I think Suzuki says the same thing.
Does it?
Yeah, he says, before I was enlightened, a mountain was just a mountain and a river was just a river. And then after I became enlightened, a mountain was just a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that realization goes all the way back to the Buddha. He looked up and saw the morning star. Shocking, the morning star has been there for billions of years. Did he just now notice that? I don't think so. He realized that too, that it's just as it is. That star comes there every morning and has been. It still is. And so it's we think that this enlightenment thing is something separate from reality, that we somehow get above reality. We levitate a couple inches above the rest of the common people. But unfortunately,
Have a glow about it.
you what?
A glow.
Yes, we glow.
Glow,
Yeah,
you glow.
we glow.
Versus the light. Yeah.
You're just a little bit lighter than everybody else. But I tell people who ask me about, should I take Jukai, should I take vows, or should I become a priest, right? And I tell them, yes, but it's an emotion. The more vows you take, the further you study them, the more you sit, the more of service and the less you become. And that's, most people think that you become something extra. But I think it's just the opposite. You get rid of all that extra. The extra goes away. And you get down to what's real. And what's real is pretty spectacular. But it's really kind of counterintuitive, because we think that it's going to be, not only are we glowing, but we now perceive the rest of the glory of the universe as glowing, and it's something really special. And it's like, it's already special. It's already fabulous just as it is. It's already perfect just as it is. Not that it's always good. It's the Sangha being a group of people who are studying Buddhism, and from the bigger point of view, the Sangha is everybody, because everyone's practicing something. The Sangha is supposed to be this group of people who are harmonious, and but we quickly forget that harmony is not just made up of sounds that sound good. So in music, there are three parts to harmony: consonance and dissonance. So in unison, as we know, you're just completely aligned at one with the next person
Same
sitting
note,
next to you.
right? Singing the
Same
note.
note. You're singing the same note. You know, in consonants, you're singing, you know, at intervals that your ear perceives as sounding pleasant, good. And dissonance, which is an interval that doesn't sound good, that's grating to a greater or lesser degree. And noted. Certainly, when I was studying Bach, my teacher always said, "Play the dissonance," because you want Bach to sound harmonious, so you're constantly resolving those dissonances to consonances. But you know what makes the consonants and the unison sound as good as they do is the fact that they're resolving out of dissonance, and to really emphasize that as you're playing it in a consonant form, such as Baroque, really makes that sound special. But by the time you get to the 20th century, they didn't bother resolving the distances. They just left you with the distance.
Jazz.
But
And jazz was born.
well, yeah, the elements of jazz started long before the 20th century. But I'm talking about some of the mid-century composers, or beginning of the century with Schoenberg and Rite of Spring, who wrote Rite of Spring. Stravinsky, thank you. So, they didn't bother to resolve you out of those distances. And even if you go back, neither did a lot of the early composers. A minor key was considered to be dissonant. So anything written in minor key, a statement minor key, was that dissonant. But all of that is harmony, and it's not separate from harmony. So we don't say, it's only harmonious if it's a major third, and it's not harmonious if it's a minor second. Both of those are forms of harmony. So, and sagas invariably express all those forms of harmony, and being one with that harmony, just as it is, being one with that minor second or that tritone, which to our ear sounds horrible, is hard to do. It's hard to let that in.
Sort of a metaphor for life too.
Yeah.
It's like the big sangha.
The big sangha
is comprised of all those harmony, dissonance, and unison. I mean, consonance, dissonance, and unison.
Yes.
That goes on every day, all around us. People we don't agree with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and to let that in and be one with that which you do not agree. Hardest thing to do, because we keep wanting to resolve it to be something different. We want Trump to be a Democrat. Yes.
Well, I'll say, going back to Mark and I had this email discussion, but the sangha is the community, right? But what unites the sangha is truth. Mm-hmm. If the community sits in truth, which is the satsang, mm-hmm. That's what sometimes a lot of communities are missing. They want to continue their upside down thinking, and that's maybe that's the dissonance right there. But the truth kind of brings back people into harmony. And there's, when you're talking to, I keep thinking like this idea of, unity in diversity.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we can see the diversity, right? We look around, we see, different people, different skin color, different heights, different genders, different values, right? So we see so much of the diversity that we miss the unity. But I think the diversity is to me is also a very special gift. I appreciate every time I go out and I eat a different ethnic food, and I so much enjoy the variety that the world gives you. So I think it's in some ways I think we strive for the unity, but I think also appreciating diversity is such an important part of life.
Yeah. So I mean these so-called differences, this diversity, does not at all bother oneness, because oneness has an infinite variety of expressions. So these are all expressions of oneness. And there are no two things in the universe, as far as we know. We'll probably just we haven't yet proven there's parallel universes. But so in this universe, as far as we can tell, there are no two things that are exactly alike. So there's diversity, even in a room where people all look alike or are all the same gender, there's still diversity. Nope. So,
I think even snowflakes, right? Don't they even say that
Yeah.
no two snowflakes are ever exactly the same? If you were to take each snowflake and put it under a microscope, you would see just little differences in the patterning.
Yeah.
Which I think.
I think the problem is when we talk about truth. I mean, what is truth?
who's true?
Huh?
Who's true?
Truth is truth that we're talking
Well,
about.
relative truth. Right?
Well,
relative truth versus absolute truth.
Yeah.
Well, what's absolute truth?
You can't talk about that. It's non-dual. You can't talk about anything that's non-dual.
Well, I think I prefer the term reality.
Yeah.
Because the truth is a story about reality. Reality is what happened before you make a story about it. So I realize that we have to tell the story. We're story, vocal, verbal species, and these stories, the exact same reality. The story about that exact same reality will be different depending on who's telling. I think these perspectives are all different. Each perspective is still valid and is still truth and does not at all disturb reality. It doesn't change reality. It's just a different point of view, a different perspective on what that reality is.
But we could say it's both true and untrue at the same time.
We could, absolutely. So, and
It's like the discernment of judgment. You still have your preferences.
we still,
Yeah.
You still have your choices, but it's discernment from, judgment.
Yeah.
Because the judgment is when you get attached. And the discernment is seeing things and having to make choices. And you can't stop having those
we can.
seeing things and making choices.
Right.
Like all one.
Yeah, we're not. Just because we're all one doesn't mean we're all the same. So we're not.
There's diversity again.
Yeah, so you're like, oh, so you're different, but you're not judging them, but you are different.
Yeah, and
You have a different opinion,
right.
right? And it's not all always correct,
Yeah.
So, one
is expressed in those differences.
Yeah.
I can't remember who was it said it was, but it's one of the quotes I remember reading was, student asked the master, so how do I find my way to true enlightenment? And the master says, just stop having opinions.
Yeah.
I don't remember who said that.
Yeah, well, it's part of this into me. The great way is not difficult, just to stop picking and choosing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, 3rd century. I can't remember who wrote this, but that's where that comes from. That, yeah, if you sit down, shut up and just experience reality, that's enlightenment. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. The story about enlightenment is always going to contain some bias.
Yeah.
Because we are different to them. I don't think why it's used.
And that brings us back to today's lesson about the difference about being enlightened by the myriad things and experiencing the myriad things.
Mm-hmm.
So when we experience, that's our, sort of our spin on it, our evaluation of it, our opinions about it. When myriad things just appear without opinions and judgments and conceptions, then
Well, the experience happens before the story. So this is why we practice. This is why we sit and just breathe and we let the thoughts go, because the direct experience of reality has no story to it at all. It's just experience. When we start to talk about it, then that's when that's when it becomes confusing. You're right. It's always, after the fact, have the experience first, and then you make up some story about
just like every crisis that's happened, like 9/11, so that when it happened, everybody experienced it.
Mhm.
Right? So then, and when we recover. And then everybody's quiet, and they're experiencing it.
Yeah.
Then all the enemies come up.
Yeah.
And then it's, it's attack, we do all kinds of things. And the divisiveness comes from that.
Yeah.
But for those moments, usually when some crisis like that happens, it's a really beautiful period of just
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
And every opening to do the right thing can come after that.
Yeah.
Right?
Or it's every opening to do whatever you're going to do, because certainly the expression, the reaction to 9/11 was, it had its full expression to people who were devastated, to people who were dancing in the street. So they were who enjoyed the fact that the United States had been attacked, and celebrated that. That's the reality too. It's like we are not this monumental thing to the world. And sitting with that, you can be sitting with that and be one with their joy at our destruction. So it's this is where the practice hits the road. Yeah, if we're sitting in this room of people of like-minded people, and in this beautiful space in which we have the privilege to sit in, and suddenly something comes into the space or into your reality that you don't want to be needed. Now, how do you continue to drop away body and mind and let that in and recognize yourself as that as well, and acknowledge that you're one with that. That's the hard part. Yeah.
I think something that I was reading that to me is just I'm still kind of trying to sink in more with this analogy, but I started thinking about like all the stories, the waves of an ocean, right? And we have some big waves, some 9/11 waves, some COVID waves, some big tsunamis, and we have some little small, just barely a ripple on the water, and maybe we even have occasionally a flat, perfectly still river, but each of those waves seems different in its expression. But the thing to me that really holds it all together is that then you realize every wave is wet. And it doesn't matter what that wave is, it's still wet. And it's that wetness that is the characteristic that unites everything. So everybody's different opinion is like a different wave, but it still has the wetness in it. It's still a part of the expression of the oneness.
Yeah, that's the reality. So the metaphor for reality is the ocean, and the wave is still the ocean, although we experience the wave differently from the ocean. It's not different or separate from the ocean. And depending on the size of the wave, it's either something joyous to surf or devastating to disrupt. Still the ocean, still reality. And if it's a tiny little ripple, someone very, very skillfully skips a stone across the top of the water side, right? But but you see the ripples, going out from where the stone is water, and that's how karma works. Those ripples ripple out not just in one direction or in one way, they ripple in all directions and in all ways. So karma, it's not either good or bad. It's just all aspects are being caused by that particular event. And that's what the reality is that we're living. Just one big ocean.
How would you describe
reality. I have a hard time sometimes
Yeah.
grasping that concept. Is it something external, something internal, or is it both?
Well,
And don't you automatically, when reality is presented, don't you automatically almost have a judgment about it, and it makes reality different for some
You do.
different people?
but if you're describing reality, what you're describing is no longer real.
But
It's no longer real. So reality is just what's happening right now before you make up stories about it. So that's what's real. If you're talking about it, it's now an opinion about what's real, and is because you can only talk about our whatever stories are always past tense. They're always after the fact. Experience is instantaneous. And there's no gap in that experience. So the only way to have that experience is to just to really to experience the experience of reality. You have to be quiet, shut the brain off for just a millisecond. That's all it takes, and just be the myriad dharmas, just as they are happening right here, right now. And that's impossible to express because it takes several seconds for the brain to register what it is you're experiencing. Fortunately, our bodies are much faster, our nervous system is much faster than the brain. So before your brain even registers that it's hot, you've snatched your hand away from the stove that was 400 degrees when you touched it. So, then, it's always after the fact that it's like, ow, you felt. Now, it took that ow, seconds later for it to form. It's talking about it always late to the party. Hey, Kurt, what do you want to say? No? Oh, okay.
Yes, I heard. I'm fine. I'm good.
One quote I like is, "The ocean accepts all kinds of water."
Yeah. There's no, and water takes the shape of whatever container it is in. So one of the famous saying we have in tea, but it's heart like water, miso no shin. So whatever container you are in, take that shape, be with that in that container as that container is. Because we're always in and out of different containers. There's this container, and then there's our work container, our home container, and our car container. As I was, realizing, I just happened to be thinking about the similarity of mammals. They're 2 eyes, 2 ears, mouth, 4 limbs, and the torso make up the bodies of most mammals. And I'm looking around at all the cars and I'm going, oh my God, we made our cars look like mammals. There's this continuity. It's got 2 headlights, 4 wheels.
Oh,
and
yeah. Have you seen Dumb and Dumber?
No.
The car looks like a dog.
It's like a
It has
dog.
the ears like a dog. They make it up, styrofoam and stuff.
So you can't seem to get away from noticing how similar things are across the spectrum. And it really doesn't matter whether or not they're grasped and not grasped. This grasping is impossible to do. It's impossible to grasp and hold on to an instantaneous experience. We try, and we try to hold on to it, and we try to describe it, and we write, billions of words about these experiences, but all of them miss the point. So it's this not grasping that we directly experience what reality really is, and that experience remains untold.
Why, you just fired all the writers in the world,
I did.
and all the storytellers.
And
Put them out of work, you are terrible that way.
Well, Bodhidharma said, no learning on words and letters. left a whole bunch of words and letters behind for us to read. Dogen did the same thing. People who knew that these words were after the fact, that were not reality in themselves. They left those words for us to study, to bring us to that understanding. And it takes a while, at least it did for me, maybe because I'm slow, to really get quiet enough that you have that experience. And it's certainly not what you would expect, because of course you would have I had those ideas in my brain about reality, or about enlightenment, that I would have this explosive, overwhelming experience. I just be laid out in ecstasy forever.
Keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear about it.
But I remember the first time I'm sitting there, and suddenly the brain is just quiet for the chattering and stopping. Okay. Then I came back on a second later, going, okay, that was the voice Rose is talking about. It's nothing. It's really nothing. It's just quiet experience of reality, just as it is. And it's and it doesn't stay. It's temporary. Everything that all of these experiences are. So trying to chase that experience is like, oh, I had this great experience. It's all that. I go back and get that. If I can't get it, I need a drug to get it for me. but you just have to, and it's going to be different because reality has moved on. It does not stay. It is not a static thing. So it's the experience of reality as it is happening is going to constantly change. Can you allow yourself to drop away your ideas and notions about that reality to really experience reality just as it is in each instance of this?
I know there's some teachers, and I haven't ever studied with any of them, but because basically they say they disallow you to study. They won't let you bring books.
Oh yeah.
And it's almost. But I get it, from the standpoint of they want you to be experienced. That they don't want you to study.
Hi, can we help you? It's okay. Yes.
Oh, that's my daughter's.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's good. No, thank you for letting us know.
Well, in terms of like lectures,
Mhm.
I can't remember who said it, or I probably did butchering the quote. It was, "May there be enough water in the Pacific Ocean to rinse your ears."
Yeah. Well, it's from the Shinshu Dharma combat.
Oh, okay. How does it go exactly?
May there be enough water in the Pacific to wash my words from your ears.
Yeah.
So they've just gone through this whole. They're the head trainee for the 90-day training period. At the end of that training period, they go through Dharma combat. They study the koan for that 90 days. They present that koan, and they take questions from the audience. And they answer those questions as best they can. This is the first kind of rite of passage as being a senior student, or is becoming a senior student in Sangha. And there are there's like an introductory speech, then the koan, and then the question and answer. Then there's this ending speech, and part of that ending speech is may there be enough water in the Pacific to wash my words from your ears, because it's the acknowledgement that everything that had just been said is now gone and it's meaningless. So it only happens in the moment. Those answers were applicable in that exchange, and are not something to be employed for permanent. So it is exactly those words are exactly what reality is all about. Because this reality right here, right now, is different in the next moment, constantly changing. And time, and this is about being one with that, and not separating any element of it, and even time. So it's not happening in linear time is the coalescence of time as we are being, or we are being as time, and time is us as beings. Reality is us as beings. So the grass is us as beings. The phenomena, everything that's happening, not separate in any way from anything at all that is going on around us.
Would you say that reality can be defined as being time?
You should write a book.
Okay.
So we are reality.
Yeah. And use the Japanese word uji.
Okay. Yeah. Gotta use that. And
There you go. Want to give you a good succinct definition.
I needed a definition of reality.
So, and she quotes Katagiri Roshi, who also, he mentioned Roshi, Izumi and Katagiri Roshi were I'm not sure how friendly they knew each other. So she writes about him. I think that he was closer to Suzuki Roshi. We are connected and simultaneously we are going back and forth. It is not exactly going back and forth, it is coming and going at super speed. This is the real state of existence of all sentient beings. So this movement and this being in and out of reality is a natural state of, especially humans, because we're constantly in our stories. I'm in the story of HR when I'm at work. I'm in the story of Dharma when I'm when I'm sitting here. I'm in the story of tea when I'm doing tea stuff. And so, but the reality is constantly arising all the time. And so being in and out of the state of that experience of reality is this moving that we are constantly doing.
Saw a cat.
Mike, what are you doing?
Oh.
Oh.
That's not, I think
You're kidding.
The cat
Mike
is
has-
upstaging you, are you?
I know, definitely. I don't mind.
Mike has 14 cats. I think.
Seriously, Mike, you
That's
have
only one of
14?
them there.
You have 14 cats?
He has 14 cats in that house.
Gotta
Cat
keep four.
Four.
Oh, four. Okay.
Oh.
Oh, 4? I thought he had 14. I think he no, there's only 4.
So your experience at Mike, your experience at Mike's house was 14.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Guess I just
Well,
You have to move out after 14.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of
You
cats.
leave it to the cats.
Well,
That's when the
you know,
household.
I had 14.
the person that
Him and his mom.
got me involved in the open mic group that I'm currently in, we met because he attended one of the beginner's minds sessions that I was leading up with the Koji. And so he had never, he's one of these people that he's naturally not quiet. So he wanted to experience, sitting in silence. So he did that and we started talking afterward. To this day, whenever he talks about that experience, the number of days that it was gets longer.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He will talk about, oh yeah, I'm at Arthur's retreat. It was like 2 weeks of agonizing. And I'm like, Ariel, it was a day and a half. But for him, that was torturous. So his reality, his experience of sitting there in silence was a long time.
Yeah.
So that's how
But yeah,
the opinions of reality.
you're doing something you really enjoy.
So for your experience of Mike's cats was 14.
I thought he said 14. I didn't see 14. Not just Mike, but his mom's and him. I thought that
Yes, you get a lot of cats.
Right, but so that belief, it colored your view of Mike.
Yeah.
You thought Mike's
Cat
total
person.
cat
Yeah.
Oh,
person.
yeah.
Cat person.
14 cats.
Back to reality. Back to reality.
Yeah. I worry about him now with 14 cats.
Yeah,
Cat.
but I can tell you, because I had 4 cats, so
Beautiful.
I'm literally vacuuming every other day because there is just so much cat hair and cat sand that gets all over the house. But anyway, last thoughts before we close. There's a B part to this same chapter, which is the 100 grasses are time, which we'll cover next week. It's chapter 7. So we'll move on from there. Any questions from the Zoom? Comments from the Zoom? Nope. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I've got appointments, so I'm going to once again thank you and be on my way. I appreciate you being there, and I'll try and join you next week. Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us, David, from your hospital bed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.